Giovanni Pierluigi da Palestrina. If you haven't guessed, he was an Italian composer, mainly in the Renaissance period, the 16th century. But very prominent composer, spent most of his life, his career within the Catholic Church, is known to be the epitome of classical restraint within the music of the Catholic Church, and specifically, this is the time period of the Counter Reformation, post Martin Luther, his 99 Theses, the beginning of the Protestant movement. The Catholic Church is going through this time of figuring out how to cleanse itself of some of the excesses, the problems that they were having that were pointing people towards Protestantism versus Catholicism, and so forth and so on. But as legend has it, he quote unquote saved polyphonic music from banishment by the Catholic Church. We'll talk about more of that later, but it's kind of an interesting story. So, as I was saying before, this is the time of the Counter-Reformation. It's kind of the Catholic Church's fight back against Protestantism and trying to become more popular again, and grabbing hold of the religious being of people of the time. So, to help in this endeavor, they began what was known as the Council of Trent, and it was a group of cardinals meeting and discussing ways of purging abuses and problems of some of the laxness within the workings of the church during the time. And it had effects on all practices within the church, including music. Art in the church during this time could not have any nudity, so any paintings of the time period were gone over, and they covered over the nudity. They painted clothes on them to cover up said nudity. So that was one way they were kind of cleansing the church, making it a more profound being. It is said that they wanted to, at least some of the extremists wanted to ban polyphony within music from church and sacred works, because it was a distraction to the message. So there were the extremists again who wanted to ban it completely, get rid of it, so go back to more of just the Gregorian chant style in music to focus strictly on the text. They also wouldn't do away with some of the fancier rhythms that were being incorporated in this polyphonic back and forth between voices in music of the time. One of the quotes from the Council of Trent says that music should be composed not to give empty pleasure to the ear, but to inspire religious contemplation. Again, trying to go back to that stronger inspiration, worship, towards worship of a higher power that they felt was that they were getting away from with the popularity of polyphony in sacred music of the time. So, as the church came to its decisions, they basically decided that everything should be everything impure and lascivious, quote unquote, must be avoided in order that the house of God may rightly be called a house of prayer. Again, all going back to the focus on the message instead of overly ornate prettiness. So the more back to the objectivity of chant versus expression, personal expression within the music of it. So, what this meant for music, they thought the music had too much of a secular spirit. So like I was saying with Machaut, where he'd incorporate secular ideas, melodies into his masses and stuff, they totally wanted to get away from that and focus all the music on kind of, again, chant style material. The masses, based on secular chants and parodies, were still allowed to be used because they become part of the way of music in the church. They didn't forbid it. They didn't, get away from it too far, but they wanted to limit it. And more specifically, they also wanted to eliminate the quote-unquote noisy instruments. So they got away with any extra instruments like the guitars or lutes of the day. So all instrumentation that was being used during this time, in the Counter-Reformation, they wanted to use things more so like organs, pianos, stuff of that nature that had a cleaner sound, kind of open, ethereal sound to them. And then in the performance of music during this time period, the big thing they wanted to focus on is just a better performance, better diction of the words, the text being sung. They felt that a lot of the singers at the time were just kind of being lazy, kind of lax, and just letting it go, kind of being too laid back with it, basically. So the full effect that the Council of Trent's decision had on music were these. It recognized and sanctioned the use of the popular styles and tendencies that were already being used in the church. So like the little parody idea that I was talking about before is allowed. 2, they aimed at a smoothly curved, prevailing stepwise melodic line, simplified rhythms, simplified counterpoint, and frequent use of homophony, a pure harmony, and most importantly, the clarity in the text. Again, that's the biggest thing. They wanted to clean up the polyphony so it wasn't as kind of scattered and focus more so on portraying the text in question during the time to inspire worship again. And 3, as it's just in general focused on the ideals of the Counter-Reformation, which were a conservative nature, an inwardness, a purification, and a concentration on the ideals of the Roman Catholic Church. So Palestrina's style of composition fit perfectly with the ideas handed down by the Council of Trent. It's very conservative, kind of cool, objective, impersonal, portraying the message of the church and not his own ideas, really. And it was focused on a really restrained use of polyphony, and which had a strong imitative style, like much of what was going on at the time, but it was kind of just reined in a little bit more. So each of the voices were of equal importance, and they flowed well together, both rhythmically and harmonically, to create the contour, the style of the phrase that went right along with the text being portrayed. Majority of his works, 4 voices again, which that openness of just 4 voices instead of more gave it that clarity to help focus on the words, the text that were being presented. Another thing that happened with Palestrina's work is that he did not use any strictly stayed away from any chromatic ideas happening within his work. So there was no chromaticism, which meant there was none of those weird kind of expressive notes in there that might sound out of place or out of tune and create extra dissonance in the song. It was all right in the key that he started in. He stayed within that key very strictly. Again, strong example of his conservatism. His chord progressions and his texture were very subtle, slow changes that occurred over time. That were very smooth, kind of connected sound to him. And rhythmically, his works had a collective, a common rhythm. So it all moved in one strong ebb and flow. And that way it sounded as a unit versus 4 individual voices. It was the entire choir. So again, that helps with that connection, that connectivity, that clarity of the message that the church wanted to portray. And through this, he created the balance between the lines being presented, the melodies and the harmony and the structure of all these works. Again, very strong conservative nature, exactly what the church wanted at this point in time. The piece of Palestrina that is noted for, quote unquote, saving polyphony from banishment within the Roman Catholic Church is the Pope Marcellus Mass. And it conforms with all the ideas, the stylistic traits presented and kind of handed down from the Council of Trent. In its simple use of counterpoint, its clarity of text, its lack of a strong beat. So in using all these characteristics, it is, quote unquote, said to have saved polyphony within the Roman Catholic Church, creating kind of the legend of it as it goes there. And again, all in the intent of inspiring the faith, devotion to a higher power. So it kind of proved all that could be done. It didn't have to be chaotic polyphony, counterpoint, imitation, that is. It could be used in a clear, kind of succinct, serene way. And in doing so, he actually created what we think of as musicians nowadays, the beginnings of the rules of counterpoint, and how all his voices, they moved independently, but they also moved together in a unit to create nice sounding chords and rhythm, melodic lines, all of that together. And we'll see more of that used in Bach and Handel as we go along here. So some specific musical characteristics of the Pope Marcellus Mass that I want you guys to focus on. First off, it's completely unaccompanied, and that helps show the emotional restraint and objectiveness in the music. The voice leading is very subtle, so kind of everything connects nice and smoothly. There's no ragged, jagged kind of shapes and movement between them. In a way, he basically refined Josquin's style into this more serene nature of music here. The other things, like I was saying before, that all the voices have a similar and equal importance, but they all have their own individual nature as well. So you have this cool and that interesting dichotomy of they're individuals, but they're working as a whole within the entire piece. That helps create, like I said, the backbone of what we know as rules of counterpoint or writing harmony that we still study to this day.